Hi guys, so we're going to be working on the first Excel, and this is kind of a survey for the much of the course. So right in the first 2 weeks we'll get exposed to practically most of the functionality of the Excel that we'll be using, and that's quite a lot. We'll be doing real industrial strength projects, and so let's get to working on the Excel. So this is it has a couple of sheets, the main, the solution for the main, where you can go and look at the formulas we have used. We explored the topic of addressing. We look at the VLOOKUP. Again, we do some of the problems here and the solutions are given here. We look at if statement. So the first thing we are going to do is to just duplicate this small range of cells, and while we are duplicating we'll be discussing couple of points. And so the first is the columns are of two kinds. So some are measures, that is things that you can subtract, add, divide, multiply, and some are columns that you cannot do that. So for instance, these columns you can say this is 50% more, this is 25% less, and some columns you can't do that because they are like these. You can't say this date is 50% more than the other date. Then we have this column which looks like numbers, 001, 002, but they are really not numbers. They look like numbers. So in business it is very common. In real life also it is very common. So you have a telephone number. The telephone number, I don't say my telephone number is 28% more than yours. It sounds funny. Then numbers are just like symbols, alphabets. Similarly, you have a student ID. It is again something you don't divide and multiply. You have a social security number. Similarly, in business, you will have order number, good received number, purchase order. So all of these use numbers, but they are not measures because we don't add, multiply, subtract, and so on. So we have only two divisions here. I mean, two dimensions here, and we have a dimension here. So this is very clearly a dimension because they are alphabets. This is also a dimension most of the time because they are dates and we don't divide one date by other. So that is the basic notion of dimensions and measures. So whenever I get a new data sheet, you get a Excel. To know what that Excel is about, the data is about, we look at the dimensions. Is the dimensions about a business? Is the dimensions about a disease? Is the dimensions about something to do with social issues like poverty and so on? So the dimensions tell us what is the data about. Then, given that this is a measure, there are many kinds of measures we get. So there we have got data types. So data types can be numbers. So this is a text. These are currencies which are just number formatted in a certain way. Then this is a date. Then we have something called a logical, which is yes or no. So that is called as a data type. So I have dimensions, I have numbers, and then within numbers I have many data types. So they can be, integers, they can be floating points, they can be currency, and so on. Then everything has a cell has an address. So this is H5, and we are writing a formula here, which is says that this sales minus cost. So they are called as addressing. So when I'm writing a formula, I'm using some addressing, and addressing can be relative and addressing can be absolute. and we'll come to that. So let's first go and quickly create this data sheet here. So we'll just do like this: date, order number, sale, cost, profit, tax, tax rate 0.05, state, and surcharge. So let me make this, then I start inputting my, so now this one for next, all of these ones I make them as date. These ones I make them as text. This is all I make them as a currency. Again, this is a text, and these ones are again going to be some numbers. And so I'm going to write, and you can see already the system has a certain intelligence. So if I had few thousand of those rows, I'll just go crazy trying to copy them, but the system can recognize a pattern. So whenever I get this hashtag, it means I need to enlarge it, and I need to go up to 11.1 only. So I delete this, I delete this. Then my order numbers are text, so I'm allowed to write 001. If my field was not a text, the system would not allow me to write 001. It will convert it immediately to 1, 2, and 3. So again, the system can recognize a pattern. And here it's currency, so I write 100. It will get formatted the right way. Cost is given as 0.95 of the sale, so I'm going to be writing a formula. So a formula always starts with equal to. The moment I make an equal to, the system knows that this is going to be a formula, and it is 0.95 F4. And again, I don't need to write this formula over and over again. I can copy this formula, and I can see here that the formula is F4 has become F5, then it's F6, F7, F8, F9. So that is how relative addressing, when I copy it down, the number value changes. The profit here is again a formula which is equal to sales minus cost, that is F4 minus G4. And again, we'll find this will become F5, G5, F6, G6, F7, G7. So this is because we are using a what is called as relative addressing. Then tax is a quantity which is profit multiplied by this one. And I'm going to be writing it like this. Equal to FH4 into this value M3. And I'm going to be writing it like this. I do my function key and I hit F4. So I am writing it not as M3 but as $M$3, and we'll just see what happens when I use that format. So now when I copy paste, I will find that the H4 has changed to H5, but M3 doesn't change. H5 has become H6, but M3 remains the same because I want the same tax rate here. So this is the purpose of absolute addressing. And so this is a small sheet in which we discuss what. So here is a formula called M35 into 1.1. When I copy it vertically, it becomes 35, becomes 36, becomes 37, becomes 38. When I copy it horizontally, the number 35 stays the same, but M becomes N, becomes O, becomes P. So that is how relative and absolute addressing changes the way we are looking at things. So here again I have some numbers. This is for you to practice, and then I have some formula given here. Now when I copy the formula, G becomes H, H becomes I, so which is 0 here, Then when I copy the formula down, G will become 6, H will become 6. So this is how my formulas change as I do my relative addressing and absolute addressing, and then when I copy them. So now I have something, I can do more formulas, and I can write this is equal to sum like this, and so this is F4 colon F14 means these are the range of cells including F4 and F14. And now I can do copy paste, so F4 and F14 will become G4 and G14 will become H4 and H14 will become I4 and I14. So this is some of the basic things that we are trying to understand here. So we have a sense of what is addressing, relative and absolute. Absolute is a dollar sign, and with the dollar sign, when I use it in a formula and I copy paste, the address will not change. Now what is the formula? A formula is always something where you start with an equal to sign, and then you have some cell addresses, minus, plus, multiply, and so on. And then we look at something called a financial formula. So there are formulas that are inbuilt into the system, and these formulas, we can go here and we can see there are many, there are thousands of formulas that is provided in Excel. And so here is a simple problem in which a person takes a loan of 50,000. The interest of the bank he pays is 6% a year, and for 18 years the loan has been taken. So we want to know how much with this mortgage the person would be paying as monthly. So here is a formula which is called as PMT. So I write PMT. So all formulas start with an equal to sign, then they may have a name. Then the first thing is a rate, which is in my cell D24, and we are doing everything monthly, so I divide by 12. The next thing is the number of period, which is D25, and again I multiply by 12. The present value is 50,000. The future value, once it is paid off, it is 0, and then we take it as at the end of the period. So that is a example of using a built-in formula that is already provided to us by Excel. Now the next important formula we'll be using is what is called as a VLOOKUP. So a VLOOKUP means vertical looking up. So the idea is that my Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Connecticut, New York, they all have different rates, the sales tax rates. And so for every RI, I want to write 0.05. For every MA, I want to write 0.06. For every CT, I want to write 0.07. And again, if we imagine that we have 10,000 rows, it can be really time consuming to be able to manually do it. And so we have a formula called VLOOKUP, and the way it works is I first make this into a table. So I highlight this, I go here, and I just call it say rates, and I hit enter, and I can go back and check if I have this table, and it says rates main 017 to P23. And the way I get these values by reading this table is I write equal to V lookup. I read this value, which is 04. Then my next thing is the table array, and that's the name I've given is rates. Then I am looking at the second column, so that is the column number. And then finally I am looking at an exact match. And I can now, so that is a VLOOKUP, and this is a VLOOKUP exercise I have put here, and there is also a solution here. So if you look at this exercise, the idea is that cities have zip codes, and so again, I may have a list of 500 employees who work in different cities, and given this, I want to transfer the zip code from this table to here. So that is what I am going to be doing now. I call this as a state. I go here equal to B2 VLOOKUP. B2 state. That's the name I've already given. Again, it's the second column that I'm looking at. and I am doing an exact match. So that is one of the ways. I mean, that is the way to what we do. We have an exact match, and this is given example of estate tax when less than 300,000. It is less than it is 2%. When it is 300 to 600, it is 5%. When it is 600 to 1 million, it is 9%. 1 million up is 13%. So we here it is not an exact match. So a house that is 300,000 would be 5%. A house that is 400,000 would also be 5%. And so here we what we call is the match value instead of false is going to be true. So that is how, and the VLOOKUP formula solutions are given here. So this is just copied from here to here, and then the estate tax comes from this formula. So this is how you'll see. I am calling this as a tax. So when I highlight this, I call it as a tax. That is the name of my table. And the way I compute it here is I do VLOOKUP. This is my average home prices, which is just I've copied here. Then my table is called a tax. My second column, I'm looking into it, and this is now true. So that is how I calculate my tax. And you can see the 186,000 is below 300. The next one is 1.3 million. So that is this 13%. So anything 1 million and up. This is 350,000 is going to be 5%. So this is how my thing is working. The last one we will be doing is an if statement. And an if statement has 3 parameters. So the first parameter is a statement that either evaluates to true or false. If it is true, I do one thing. If it is false, I do another thing. So I'm going to be using this to write the tuition. So I have, say, a few hundred courses. They're either undergraduate or MS. Undergraduate is 4,000, MS is 5,000. So just like the VLOOKUP, we are going to be using a if statement formula. And so the way I'm going to write is like this. The first element, that is the C5, is equal to UG, is a logical statement. It is either true or it is false. For instance, in this case, C5 equal to UG will prove to be false. Now, when it is true, then I put the value 4,000. When it is false, I put the value 5,000. And so I use this formula. But when I get into this one, I have now another branching. So when I write C1 equal to UG, if it is true, I put the value 4,000. If not, I do another if statement. So this is a second if statement that is buried into the first one. And so you can have any number of burying its if statement within if statement. An if statement is a very general formula, and you can write practically any kind of code just using if statement. For instance, this is the VLOOKUP that we are doing, and we are seeing here that the VLOOKUP can be substituted by if statement. But in real life, if you have 50 states and you're writing a if statement, that if statement would be, I don't know, a few yards long, and it would be completely unreadable. And so we have a VLOOKUP so that the solution is readable. So these are some of the important elements that we wanted to study today. And I would advise you that you go through it over and over again, and it will take you quite some time before you start feeling comfortable with this.